The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Thank you, Madam President. I know that this does not bring us closer to the end of today's meeting, but since today's topic is extremely important, I think it's essential to say a few words about what was the reason for this meeting, which we didn't have a chance to say yesterday because we were not given a chance to have a separate meeting of the Security Council on this topic. And unfortunately, yesterday's meeting, in any way possible, our Western colleagues tried to kind of sweep it under the carpet, and we have seen an example of how of the new new rules-based order. I would like to once again focus on the events in Bucha, which became the premise for conducting today's meeting and has led to some far-reaching conclusions that many of you have already made. All units of the Russian armed forces fully withdrew from Bucha as a gesture of good faith on the 30th of March. The very next day, after a round of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey, in the presence of negotiators. Now, a report about this was published that very same day on an official website of the Russian Defense Ministry. During the time that the town was under the control of the Russian armed forces, not a single civilian suffered from any kind of violence. People were able to move around freely around the town and use their cell phones. Furthermore, the towns of the Kiev Oblast was the Russian army supplied 450 tons of humanitarian assistance to those cities. This was confirmed. Now, the towns, the Russian army did not prevent people from leaving the towns. All inhabitants could freely leave the towns toward the north. At the same time, the southern areas of Bucha, including residential areas, were shelled round the clock by Ukrainian forces from using heavy caliber weapons, tanks, and mortars. Already after the withdrawal of the Russian forces, the mayor of Bucha, Anatoly Fedoruk, in his video statement on the 31st of March, presented this as a heroic liberation of the city by the Ukrainian armed forces. Now, let's set aside its so-called liberation, and let's focus on the fact that he confirmed the fact on the 31st of March that there were no more Russian soldiers in the town on the 31st of March. Furthermore, the mayor did not mention any local inhabitants with their hands tied and having been shot. I mean, could you believe that the mayor would not have noticed on the streets, as reported, of 280 corpses? He wouldn't have noticed that? On the 1st of April, the deputy of the council, Yekaterina Ukraintseva, the deputy of council of Bucha, in a 2-minute video, warned several times the local residents that representatives of the Ukrainian security forces have entered the town and are conducting a mop-up operation, and she's asking everyone to be very careful. Now, on social media, you can also find an almost 8-minute video about the announced mop-up of Bucha by the Ukrainian National Police on the 2nd of April. On that video, there are no bodies of civilians on the streets. Furthermore, on that video, the National Guard of Ukraine also interviews local residents who didn't mention any corpses or mass shootings. On one of the Ukrainian news sites, there was also a warning posted on the upcoming mop-up of Bucha on the 2nd of April from a mop-up of Russian collaborators. Now that's been deleted, but users were able to save that video. Now, testimony, so-called testimony of crimes, or evidence of crimes by the Russian armed forces in Bucha appeared only on the 3rd of April, on the fourth day after the Russian forces left the town. Once again, without any evidence based on the presumption of guilt, the Russian army is being accused of some kind of evil deeds. Of course, we could not notice how these Ukrainian videos were taken up by Western media and human rights organizations who claim to be impartial, and the clear inconsistency between the Ukrainian version and the actual facts is clear. If the corpses of civilians had been out in the open several days, they would have had several signs that were well known to forensic specialists. And our Western colleagues don't seem to be bothered by that. Otherwise, the New York Times would not even go further by stating that the corpses were there on the street since the 20th of March. Can you imagine what kind of state they would have been in? Furthermore, many of the bodies in the videos circulated by the Ukraine had white armbands on. These are armbands that were worn by civilians after the entry of the Russian armed forces into the town. And one of the videos posted by Ukrainian radicals, you could hear a call to shoot anyone who doesn't have blue arm bands on. That video during the mop-up of Bucha was posted by a member of the territorial defense battalion to whom the Ukrainian authorities handed out weapons. Furthermore, the member of the city council of Bucha, who I mentioned, Yekaterina Ukraintseva, stated on the website Medusa that she did not see the Russian forces execute any civilians. In the same interview, she confirms that it's Ukrainian armed forces that are guilty of most of the violations. Of course, these are details that have not been mentioned in the presentations of our Western and Ukrainian colleagues. However, Ukrainian President Zelensky is already claiming that all these staged events in Bucha have give the Ukrainians the right for an uncivilized response. Well, we can just imagine what that is, based on how Ukrainian radicals behaved in the east of Ukraine. Many testimonials of their crimes are shocking. Unfortunately, Ukrainian experts on disinformation and staging do not intend to stop there. As the Ministry of Defense claimed, based on confirmed information in the evening of the 4th of April in the town of Moshun, 23 kilometers to the northwest of Kiev, troops from the 72nd Ukrainian Main Center of Psychological Operations conducted another staged video of so-called killing by Russian troops of civilians for future circulation by Western media. These kinds of activities have been carried out by in Suma and other towns. So in conclusion, I would like to address my Western colleagues. We understand very well that what you're doing by fueling anti-Russian hysteria every single day. So we are assuming that there will be further horrible provocations similar to the one in Bucha. New attempts to discredit Russian soldiers and to present them as murderers and rapists. I said once again that this is an incredibly low blow. Of course, you're not interested in the fact that modern technologies today make it possible to create any video. We watched a video today presented by the Ukrainian side. Today, already the Ukraine is full of in fact, information refuting what was in the video, stating that it wasn't filmed in the right place with not the right people. And just a few words to my American colleague, who declared a crusade to exclude Russia from the Human Rights Council. This is stated by the representative of a country who 3 years ago criticized the council in the strongest, harshest terms, that it had the audacity of condemning the actions of American soldiers in Afghanistan. And as is well known, the United States left the council. So I hope that our colleagues from the United Nations will not allow themselves to be manipulated and play up to Washington and its very dangerous games. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. The representative of Ukraine has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Before I switch to English, I would say a couple of lines rather. Мы уже привыкли.
We have become accustomed to the lies that are constantly being spewed in the chamber of the Security Council. Comrade Nebenzia decided to quote from an interview from a media outlet called Medusa. I'd like to ask Comrade Nebenzia, excuse me, why he doesn't quote the interview in full. Let me quote that interview, who the representative of Putin wanted to use for his purposes. I'm quoting. This is the words of the woman who he mentioned, and I'm quoting. Sometimes Russian soldiers gave dry rations to the basement, and then after lowering these rations, they tossed grenades into the basement. You wanted to quote that interview. Why didn't you quote the whole interview? This is about your humanitarian assistance, after you provide that humanitarian assistance, you toss grenades. That's an interview from the same woman who you mentioned.
English. I would like to make my further statement in response to the hypocritical questions by Putin's representative. After the video we saw with the shocking images from Bucha, Irpin, Matizhin, and other sites, he should ask these very questions to himself. How have Russians got to the cruelty of Nazis? When have you started enjoying acting like Nazis? Killing civilians, attempting to redraw internationally recognized borders, setting the task to finalize finally resolve the Ukrainian issue, like Hitler attempted to resolve the Jewish issue? When did you miss the point of Russia's turning into the Nazi-style cancerous tumor? Unable and unwilling to stop expanding and bringing to neighboring nations sufferings, destruction, pain, and death. I'm appalled over your cynical and outright lie that you don't hit civilian targets, and that is why you're moving so slowly. You hit the civilian targets and you kill the civilians. Shall I quote your own words of yesterday in the press conference that you gave here in the headquarters, where you said that civilians are killed by your army? Or shall I not? Shall I play the video? You said it is a war. Civilians are killed in the war. It's a warfare, you said. Or perhaps in your mindset, a children's hospital in Mykolaiv, destroyed by the Russian strike yesterday, was a military target. And perhaps a child killed as a result of the strike was a Ukrainian nationalist. The only truth you've said is that you are not moving as planned. And the only reason is the resistance of the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people, not your smart military planning. The Ukrainian people who realize quite clear what the Russian world in reality means. And we thank the international community for the solidarity with Ukraine. Ukraine will win in its territory, and the entire world will win despite the threats that the criminal and the liar throws in the face just in the Security Council chamber. Finally, if there is anything that we have to thank the Russian representative for, it is his acknowledgement at yesterday's press conference that Russia is waging war against Ukraine. War, you said several times, not the special operation. And I consider this confession shall impact the UN assessment of what is going on in the center of Europe. Perhaps it was the unique moment when we should believe what a fully accredited representative says in the United Nations. Hence, once again, a reminder to Putin's diplomats. Ribbentrop denied any knowledge of concentration camps, racial extermination policies, yet was found guilty at Nuremberg war crime trial. And we all know what happened to him on the 16th of October, 1946. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ukraine for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Olof Skog, the head of delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Madam President. I address